This is the Lotus Bloom Podcast. And here's your host, Morgan Wiley.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Lotus Bloom Podcast. I'm your host, Morgan Wiley, and it has been a hot minute since our last podcast. If you have been with us from the beginning, then I apologize for the delay. And if you're listening to this fresh and new, then you won't even notice an interruption in the episodes. For me, 2020 had a serious lack, a lull, a speed bump, whatever you want to call it, in my creativity. And it's taken me some time to find my way back out, to climb out of the darkness, to the cave, whatever you want to call it. I am working my way back, and I have missed this, and I've needed some creative outlets again. I feel that stirring, and so I just wanted to get back into it. And if you're still here with us, thank you. If you're new to this podcast, then welcome. I'm excited you're here, and I hope that you can find nuggets of inspiration to ignite your own creativity and to learn and share from others in their creative journeys. That's what this is about. It's about hearing other people's stories and their journeys and being inspired into creativity. I have some ideas on some things I want to move forward with in this new year. It is 2021, baby. It is the beginning of a new year, a new season, a new hope, fresh perspective. Yes, it is technically just turning the page on a calendar, but there's something to a new year that mentally allows us to have a fresh start, a clean slate, a new page, to start again, to begin anew, whatever that might mean for you and your creative journey. I'm excited to bring you another interview today that I had with a beautiful friend, an author, a graphic designer. She is creative on so many levels, and she has a heart for new authors and those trying to find their way in the publishing world. And I'm excited to share her story with you today. Some of these interviews were done throughout 2020, but I feel like everything they share is still applicable, and it is information and stories that remain true and are still worth hearing and sharing. So without further ado, I would like to introduce you today to Rachael Ritchey. Also, as a quick side note, I had been dealing with allergies when I conducted this interview with Rachael, and I have a very raspy, kind of a smelly cat vibe going on. So just bear with me and enjoy the interview. I'd like to welcome to the show Rachael Ritchey. Welcome. I'm so excited you're here today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Oh, I'm glad. So, Rachael, for those who don't know you, you are a friend of mine, but you are an author and you are a graphic designer, and you're kind of a jack of all trades when it comes to designing and creativity. How does your creative journey begin?
Well, for me, my creative journey began probably in my early 20s when I really took to the idea of photo manipulation. I've always loved to write. That's always been something on the back burner, I guess you could say,
Okay.
where I loved writing. I just was terrible at ending stories, and I hadn't really figured out the process of starting a story and ending a story and what that took to really get to that point. So I struggled with that a lot of years, and I focused mainly, on poetry. But
Oh.
in my early 20s, I started doing a lot of photo manipulation and photography, and that was a really great creative outlet for me. I did a couple of senior photo shoots, some weddings and things like that, and then did some photo manipulation for them as far as, photoshopping, changing colors, adding special details, et cetera, et cetera. And that grew over time. But it just wasn't really my main niche for what I creatively wanted to do with my life. It always came back to writing
Mm-hmm.
and what I wanted to do with that. So about how many years ago is this now? 2013, 2014. See, now I can't even remember it, and it hasn't been that long. So 2013-ish, 2014, we had a foster daughter.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a lot of up and down because that's just kind of what comes with the foster system. There's a lot of roller coasters of emotions and things that
Sure.
come and go throughout the process. And so I was getting to this point where I knew that she was probably going to be leaving us, and we'd had her for a couple years by then.
Oh,
So it
wow.
was really difficult for me emotionally, and I started shutting down and kind of pulling away from the people around me. And it was at that point in time that I started talking to God, and I was telling him how I felt so ugly on the inside, and I didn't like who I was anymore, and I didn't like that I wasn't emotionally invested in anyone.
Mm.
And through that prayer and just kind of admitting where I was and how I felt about myself, I felt led to the story, I guess you could say. Like, all of a sudden, the story
Mm-hmm.
started coming into my head, and it had a beginning, a middle, and an end. And it was about being this princess, this child of a king, who who was loved and beautiful, not because of what she was on the outside, but because of who she was on the inside. And that
Mm-hmm.
story, that short story that kind of kept playing in my head for days and days and days, turned into weeks. And so I had to write it down. I had to write down what was in my head. And so I went ahead and did that. And then from there, because I had that bone of that story, it built into the first book in my Chronicles of the 12 Realms series. And since
Mm-hmm.
then, the idea of how to build a story and how to get from beginning to end started clicking. And I used that story building not only to write these books, but also um, to recognize what was going on inside of myself
Mm-hmm.
and how to kind of grow and come back to the real world. So I think that writing really became a cathartic exercise from the beginning in
Mm-hmm.
that way. And since then, it's just kind of become its own monster, you could say.
Wow. Oh, wow. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. That was really honest.
Yeah, anytime.
Yeah. But I think you're right. And I think a lot of people, and myself included, that, we use writing as it's an expression, but not only for others to read, but for us to, examine our own feelings and help us process the things that we're going through as well. And I think that's really a good example of that.
Yes, definitely. You said that much better.
No. So you mentioned the Chronicles of the 12 Realms. Let's see, how many books are in that now? Is that three, four?
There are three. I'm working on a prequel right now that has been in the works for a few years. After finishing the third book in that series, uh, I wanted to go back and write this prequel. Of course, during that same period of time, I started taking on other work to help other authors with book design. So I had learned a lot in the process of
Mm-hmm.
making my own books and publishing, since I'm an indie publisher. And I just kept seeing this need where people just didn't know what to do next, or where to go, or where to get the information, or who to hire, someone they could trust, someone who wasn't going to charge them a ton of money to get it work. So I kind of looked at it as this outreach to help other authors like me who don't have a huge budget, but who need
Mm-hmm.
quality work done. So I started offering help to other authors, and then that's kind of morphed into me doing some cover design, but mostly what I do is interior formatting, which is if you've never done it before, can be a huge headache and take hours and
Mm-hmm.
hours and hours out of your day, your week,
Yep, absolutely.
and so on. So I've taken on more and more of that over the last 3 years. And so this last year and a half have been very full between raising my kids and homeschooling my youngest and life in general, all the activities that kids have and being a mom and then wanting to write has kind of
Mm-hmm.
moved toward the back of the train of activities that get done.
Yeah.
Thankfully, that creativity, that need to create things still mostly gets satisfied in doing the formatting, although I think most people would look at that and go, "That's not creative, that's
Oh,
pain," right? But it
no, though, it is.
I think there is. I compare it to being an architect, where you take all the building blocks and you put something together. It's a little bit like playing Minecraft in creative mode.
Absolutely. But it's something that you're gifted at and it lights you up inside. And so that's what creation is. I mean, it doesn't matter if somebody else doesn't think so or not. It's satisfying that need in you and it's helping someone else.
Yes, I exactly.
So that was actually my one of my questions was how do you balance it all? How do you make time for yourself to write and to get the other things in and homeschool? I'm kind of in a similar boat, with the homeschooling and all the different things. And so I'm always curious, how do you do it?
And I could ask you the same question. For for me, I keep telling myself I need to make lists because they are really truly helpful when I have that physical list to look at.
Hmm.
In my email account right now, I do have a list on the side that kind of tells me what my main projects are so that I don't forget and get sidetracked and not finish something because I will. I'll get started on a project, but then something else will come up and my attention will go toward that new project and then I'll forget about the other one. So
Yep.
lists are super important for me. I'm just really bad at lists. Mostly, I know the major things that need to get done in my life, and then I schedule everything else around those things. So if I have time for it, I do it. Um, with writing, that is so far down on the list of things right now that it's uh, it doesn't happen as much as I would like it to. So I get writing in a couple times a week. Some of it's just the planning stages, though, because I have
Hmm.
found that I'm definitely an outliner, if not a planner, when it comes to writing, as opposed to a pantser.
Hmm.
So I don't just necessarily sit down and try to find the story as I write. I usually have markers along the way that point me to the end of that story, the part that I always struggled with. If I know the end, then I can fill everything else out in the middle.
Uh-huh.
Um, but yeah, so with organization, it's definitely helpful to have lists, even if they're just quick bullet points of these are the things that need to get done. And then I let what I'm doing kind of flow into each other. So when I'm doing homeschool, after we've gone through a lesson, I will take time while my daughter is working on her work to sit down and focus on something that is quick and easy. So formatting, because I can stop in the middle of something there and I can go back and help her with lessons. Writing is a lot
Mm.
more difficult to do that though, because it takes a
Right.
lot of concentration to stay inside of your story, in your characters' heads, moving forward.
Right.
You probably have experienced that too, since we have that
Oh, yeah.
in common.
Yeah, no, that is. It's like, okay, well, I have nap time or I have a little bit of time here, but I need a chunk of focused time to be able to get into my story, let alone, write for a block of time. So
Mhm.
if it's not enough, then yeah, if I haven't like consistently been in my story, it's almost like it takes too much energy to get back into it
Right.
than to do some small other creative thing. So yeah, I find that then my writing gets pushed aside because I haven't made extra time to really stay in the story.
Exactly. Yeah. So do you well, for me, I end up writing more in the evening, so late at night, sometimes through the night. Do you find that there's a certain time of day where you write more often too? Where
Oh
you plan
gosh.
that in?
Nights do not work for me. I am exhausted by the
I
time it's bedtime.
bet.
I pretty much have the energy to like read, and that's about it.
Close your eyes and sleep when the
Yes.
baby sleeps.
Oh, so mornings, I mean, in the past, mornings have been kind of my key time.
Mhm.
Um, and I'm just finally getting back to a place where I feel like, okay, I can get up earlier now. The baby's sleeping through the night, and so I need to make a effort to get up earlier to make that time so that I can keep writing, but so I also feel that satisfaction of creating something like
Mhm.
you said, and just to be able to get that story out.
Yes, I like that. And I think that's a really good point is to get up and make the time and schedule it for yourself. And that
Hmm.
goes along, I guess, with lists.
Yeah, it is though. It's being intentional about it and making the time. Otherwise, time gets away from you and it just keeps on going.
It sure does. So giving yourself deadlines when you're your own
Yes.
boss and sticking to them. And I think that's probably one reason with this prequel why I haven't finished it yet is because I haven't given myself a firm deadline.
Ah, yeah, it's hard giving ourselves deadlines because, sometimes I just don't listen to myself very well. I'm kind of an unruly employee, I guess. I don't know.
You're shaking your head at yourself.
I'm like, no, that's not
Oh,
going to work.
Morgan.
So you also do, um, I'm not sure I'm calling them correctly, but blog battles. Can you share a little bit about what that is and how that fits in for you?
Sure. Blog battles came out of conversations with other writers that I had met on Twitter and that we all had blogs. So we were connected in both of those places through social media, where we one other writer and myself decided we were going to challenge each other to write stories based off of one word, and we were going to use the same word
Oh.
to write our stories, and then have people read them and choose a winner. He won, by the way. It was great. His story was really good. But it was so fun. Other writers who read the stories and, um, kind of went along that journey with us were like, "We need to do this with all of us again." And I said, "You know what? That sounds like a lot of fun. Let's go ahead and continue that. We can encourage each other and just kind of help each other be better writers by, connecting on this similar path using a word prompt."
Hmm.
So I decided we're gonna call it blog battles and we're gonna do it once a week. It started out as a once a week process and people joined in when they could and not when they couldn't. Everybody would read each other's stories and then at the end of the week they would vote and we would have a winner and then I would conduct an interview with the winner and it was a lot of fun and that grew and grew to the point where I decided, you know what, we've got 20 to 30 people joining in, let's go ahead and make its own blog. So I separated it from my blog, from my website, and put it on its own
Hmm.
blog. And unfortunately, doing that because no one was really connected to it anymore, it kind of dwindled for a while. And but I kept going, kept offering it. And there was always a few consistent people who wanted to continue doing that. We would take this word. And it turned into once a month, which is more manageable for me.
Sure.
Uh, so we take this word, everybody gets the same word. You don't find out until the month that you're supposed to write your story what the word will be. And then you write 1,000 words or less. And we read each other's stories. We don't right now have the judging aspect where we pick a winner on a monthly basis, but that might be coming back. The Since we moved the blog battle over to its own blog, it now has me and another admin. So the two of us are kind of working together to keep it going.
Oh, nice.
And it works a lot better with a second person, especially someone who is excellent at connecting with people and commenting. Um,
Hmm.
his name is Gary. He's in the UK. He's energetic and really thoughtful with his comments and things. So he's been a really great asset to have with running blog battles. But it's just a lot of fun because you get all kinds of stories, people who write really who have a lot of experience and people who have just brand new experience who are writing stories and reading each other's stories. commenting, sharing. It's just a really fun community. And to see some of the writers just growing and improving because of that it's exciting.
That's really cool. So anyone can join in on that.
Yes. Yep. If you have a blog or somewhere where you can post your story and we can link to it. Yeah.
And how would someone link to it? They use the hashtag, or do they send it in somewhere?
At our blog, so it's blogbattlers.wordpress.com. Um, you can go to the comments under whatever month story it is, and you can just link there. And then we know for sure. And I look for people's links also on Twitter, but sometimes those get kind of mixed in, so it's a little bit more
Mm-hmm.
difficult there. So if you post your link at blogbattlers.wordpress.com on the month's word, then we definitely can find it and get you linked up so that people can read your story.
Oh, that's really cool. So when you are, let's say, in a dry spell, how do you find inspiration? What drives your creativity?
Oh, that's a good question. There is probably a time recently, I think, with everything that's been going on in the world and the amount
Mm-hmm.
of stress that has built up, I think that those are kind of those moments where a dry spell can hit,
Mm-hmm.
either related to outside experiences or like even in the story. If something is stressing me out in the story and I feel like I can't write what I need to write for it, that can turn into a dry spell. And I think
Mm-hmm.
what helps me get out of those is just to pick up my pencil and write something else or write what I'm feeling and then turning the focus toward what I'm trying to write, what I need to get out. But
Mm.
I don't know if that's a really good answer for that or not. Dry
I
spells
don't
are
think there's
difficult.
a right or wrong. I think it's, whatever works for you, what inspires you to, yeah, to get out of a funk, or just, to start to refocus and feel inspired again.
I know that talking to other writers and hearing how and hearing from readers, those things
Hmm.
definitely help
Yeah.
with inspiration to pick up the pencil again and keep going. So, like just yesterday, in fact, another friend texted me and said, "Hey, have you written any more books in your series? Because I had this friend who realized that she had met you at a kid's birthday party at my house once, and she didn't realize this was your book until after she finished reading it. She's super excited and she wants to read more." And I thought, "Oh dear,
That's
I need to write
awesome.
some more."
Right? Yeah, you're like, "Oh, let me hurry. I'll just crank something
Yes,
out."
I have the plan. I just haven't written it yet.
Right. It just takes time, darn it.
Yeah, so that was really inspiring yesterday, to make me wanna pick up my pencil again and put aside all these other projects that need to get done, but I can't really do that, so it'll have to wait just another week or 2, and
Just
then
a little
I'll
bit
I'll
longer.
make more time.
No, you're also an artist. You draw, right?
Yes, I mostly, sketch and paint manually, and then I suppose this is still manually, then I like to do digital art, which is something I've just recently started picking up. So I'll take my sketches and then scan them into the computer and then use them as a backdrop for doing digital paintings. So you don't actually
Oh,
use the drawings themselves. They just become like a faded image in the background to help you get the outline for whatever you want to create on the computer. So it's kind of like painting, but it's digitally. And I'm really enjoying that. It's time consuming because I'm so new to it, but I'm always looking into to new ways to do art. I'm not necessarily a crafty artist, so you won't see me building things, but I definitely like the visual aspects of sketching and painting.
very cool. I am not. I wish I was sometimes. I think my daughter wishes that I was,
Oh,
but she's the artist in the family. Um,
and you've given her so much outlet and learning for that, which is really cool. So
oh well, and I have you to thank for some of that. She's been inspired by some of the YouTube artists that you've
oh,
mentioned.
right. Sorry.
No, it's great. It's better than I can teach her.
Same, they're better than
Um,
I am too, so We'll go with it. They're good.
Yeah. Well, and you use your art for your stories. You create your characters and
Yes.
things like that, right?
Yeah, I like to do, I like to kind of imagine what my characters might look like, and it's hard sometimes because I've never really used a real person model to make the descriptions for my characters. So it's always been out of my own imagination what I think that they would be like. Although
Mm-hmm.
I do like when you can make a Pinterest board and you can use actual people to build this feeling
Mm-hmm.
and this inspiration that you can share with your readers that will
Mm-hmm.
attract their attention and will also inspire you as a writer.
Mm-hmm.
But like I said, since I do so much of it out of my own imagination, sometimes it's hard to find anybody that fits the bill.
Well, that's exactly it. I mean, I also have Pinterest boards I use for my own inspirations, but it's hard to find. You're like, well, her hair looks like this picture and her eyes look like this picture, but to get them to mesh together to fit what's in my imagination because I don't have the ability to get it out of my head. I think that's a really great tool that you can. So I
Yeah,
think that's awesome.
yeah, it is. It's a lot of fun. And what you should do, no, you shouldn't do this unless you really, really want to, is you should learn how to Photoshop and take the hair and the eyes.
Yeah, that's, in my free time in 20 years.
I have a cousin who takes on her Instagram, she takes her own head and she sticks it onto other people's bodies in her images all the time, and she writes funny things about them. And so I
Oh.
think that that's probably if I were trying to create a character with different pieces, it would be like a Frankenstein's monster sort of photoshopped experience, and it would look like I'm just sticking someone else's head on a different body.
Yeah. Oh, that's funny.
So, yeah, don't do that unless you really want to.
Yeah, don't do that. Oh, that's funny. So, do you find it important? And if so, how do you foster creativity in your own kids?
Well, with my kids, I really want them to be creative in ways that they enjoy being creative. And with some of them, it's easier than others. So as I'm with them, spending time with them, I share my loves of creativity with them. And then I look and try to see which ones inspire them the most. So whereas I love drawing and writing, my 3 of my 4 kids, all like to write. 2 of them write stories, and they're creative and they're fun. My youngest, not only does she write, she loves to draw,
Mm-hmm.
and she's starting to develop her own style in that, which is really cool. And when we get our daughters together, she loves how Reagan does it. She she loves her art, and so she's very
Oh,
inspired when
that's
she's with
sweet.
her. Uh, and then the next one up, he writes really quirky tales, and he's a gamer, so his creativity is really put into the gaming world and building, creating, and survival games and the story that builds out of that. So he's very much into story, so I like to encourage him in that way,
Really
and
cool.
we talk about writing stories. And then my next oldest, he's very much into sports, and he's more of a analytical person. He remembers all the stats on football players and basketball players and even ones that aren't even in the sports anymore. He knows facts about them, and it's crazy. So that's kind of where he is the most creative, is in gaining knowledge and sharing it and how he shares it. And then my oldest writes poetry, and I've uh, had the opportunity, and I'm so thankful she let me do this. I published a book of her poetry. It's just her day by day poetry over the course of about 4 years, and that's where her creativity shines the most. She's she's very shy about the book, but she also is really proud of it. So it's pretty fun to see.
That's so awesome. Fantastic. Yeah, poetry is not my forte. I have dabbled, but it's not in me to do that, I don't think.
Well, you can sometimes have in your books, and I appreciated about it, is you have some very poetic prose in especially your fantasy writing that is not purple. It's appropriate for the scene, but it's also not just your run of the mill words. So you do have some
Oh,
poetry
well,
in you.
thank you. Thank you. And I suppose I should, yes, I think when I am like going to sit down to specifically come up with a poem, that stresses me out.
I understand that.
But
Yeah.
yes, I suppose I can, add a little bit and weave it into a story.
When you're already inspired and in the midst of writing, it just comes
Right.
out.
Right. If I can form it in the way of, a prophecy from another realm, then perhaps that comes out a little better.
There you go.
Oh, I wanted to ask you about on your website, because you really do have a heart for other authors and especially maybe newer authors or inexperienced authors who are looking for resources and help in learning some basic things. And on your website, you have some resource videos to help them with that. Can you share a little bit about those and maybe what brought that about?
Oh, sure. I did a series of videos that I call uh, before the editor. That's what they're called. Sorry, forgot what my own videos were called. They're called before the editor, and it's really not. It's not meant to be your final publishing videos. This is really for people who are wanting to submit to an agent or a publisher to see if they'll even take their book. And it's also for people who want to send their book to an editor, and they want to have the editor focus on what's most important, which is your prose, all the
Hmm.
words that you wrote, not how you wrote them necessarily, um not with the tools that you used. So it focuses on the videos focus on using Word, Microsoft Word, to build a clean document that is easily translatable moving forward. Because
Hmm.
sometimes when you send something to an editor, if you don't know how to format your paper, you might have tabs in some places, and then you might go space, 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 space to make the same indent as a tab makes.
Mm,
Some people grew up in a time where you would push enter at the end of every line to get it to go to the
right.
next line.
Like a typewriter.
Yeah, exactly. So, because there's no consistent teaching on that, and it's not really something that you focus on when you're in high school, and I don't know if how many people were like me, but oh, those classes in the computer room were so boring. How many people actually paid attention? Right? So anyway, I've talked to a lot of people, and I've looked at enough uh, manuscripts coming in from people who have gone through their editor and then wanted to publish their paper with my formatting experience, that I see this consistent issue with we don't have any consistency in how we've learned
Hmm.
how to use programs like Microsoft Word. So I put together this series of videos to point out the most simple, basic formatting steps that you can take to make sure that you don't have to waste time down the road with fixing all those little things. So it teaches you
Hmm.
how to use words, macros, which is the styles essentially, that let you set up all of your font for different things. If you want all of your paragraphs indented or you only want certain ones indented, you can make a style just for that paragraph or just for that heading, and then you just click the button and it changes all the words in that line to what you need it to be,
Oh,
and so
okay.
on and so forth, kind of like that. But
Hmm.
they're just really meant to help people put forward their best work before they send it out to the professionals who are going to be looking at it and evaluating it. And it helps your editor not have to go through and fix the tabs or fix
Hmm.
the soft enters, soft return. Helps your editor not to have to look for where you have too many spaces where they don't belong, or
Hmm.
things like that. So it's really literally just to help you put forward a beautiful piece of work that people are not going to be judging it on how it looks, but on what they're reading.
Right. No, that's a really helpful tool. It also will save you money because if the
Yeah.
editors are focused on all of the little nitpicky things, they're going to charge for that.
So true. Yes. And I think that that's one reason that my own personal editor was so happy when I made this series of videos, because she didn't want to be spending her time doing those things. She
Right.
wanted to spend her time really helping them with their words and how the story is put together, and not getting distracted by little nitpicky things that don't really matter so much.
No, that's really great. And I'll make sure and add your links in the show notes so that, so that people can go find that because that is really helpful.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. You also did, not too long ago, an anthology compilation of other authors' stories. And you put this all together and created a contest, right? Can you share a little bit about that and how that went?
Yeah, again, that came down to really wanting to support and encourage other writers in the writer community. It was this idea of having a writing contest to put together an anthology where all the writers, nobody makes any money off of the book, not even I do, because what happens is with that book, all the proceeds, all the profits, I should say, go to Compassion International. I thought that it would be fun if we supported each other as writers through sharing the book, but also if we supported a worthy cause where
Mm-hmm.
someone goes out into the world and helps people in ways that maybe we can't do that. So Compassion
Mm-hmm.
International is one of those nonprofits that does. They make a huge difference in children's lives with schooling and food and clothing and things like that. So they're an excellent nonprofit to support.
Really great.
But the anthology, I researched how to put together a legal uh, contest. And so that took a while, which is interesting because there's a lot of rules and regulations regarding that. But I put that together, and instead of using a word like blog battle, we took the cover that I had designed, and then I reached out to you because you were awesome and said you would definitely help me with judging these stories, which probably was an interesting experience in and of itself. But I had several people uh, submit their stories, and we went through a process where you write the story. It needs to have some kind of element that connects to that cover on the book. It needs to be science
Mm-hmm.
fiction or fantasy. These were the basic rules of it, and needed to be something that you could watch with your, or not watch, but your kid that was maybe 12, 13 could read,
Mm-hmm.
and it wouldn't be inappropriate in any way. I didn't want anything that my kids couldn't read, essentially. So
Mm-hmm.
people submitted their stories, and I went through and I did the first round. I made sure that everybody got assigned a number, that there were no names attached to any of them, so there couldn't be any bias about who had
Mm-hmm.
submitted their stories. And I read through them and chose the top 10 and submitted them to you and one other author, Claire Bonchbach. And the two of you got to read through them and rate the stories. And then I took all three of our ratings and added them together to get to the winner of that anthology. So the stories that are inside the book are the top 15 stories, so the top 10 with a first, second, and third place winner, and then my story. And the cool thing is these are authors from all over the world. There's
Yeah.
Australia, United Kingdom, um, Georgia, not the state, but the country,
Mm-hmm.
here in the United States. And so it was really fun to see how people took that picture challenge, that
Mm-hmm.
inspiration on the cover, and turn it into a story. And you can see the elements in each of them as you read. So it's kind of fun to pick out, oh, that's from the cover. Oh, that's from the cover as you read.
Yeah. Well, it was such a cool experience. I was honored to be a part of it and for the cause that it went to. Um, but it's just another way of you bringing people together and especially giving writers a chance who maybe had not published anything yet to have that experience and to be able to put something out and be
Yes.
published. And I think that was a really neat opportunity. Do you think you would do it again?
I think if I had more time in the day, I would, because it does take a lot of time.
Oh, yeah.
And so as far as, see, that was around the same time where things started picking up for me business-wise as far as formatting and cover design and things.
Mm-hmm.
So at that point in time, I had to make a decision about what was most important and where I would love to do that again and really build on that and make a series of books that are all about supporting writers and supporting a good cause. But I think I would need some help with
Sure.
with
Oh,
the
yeah,
time it
sure.
takes to do. So that would turn into its own business in a sense, I think.
Oh,
I
yeah, no doubt.
totally love helping people, and if I have information, I have a really hard time not sharing it. I get really excited when someone asks a question and I know the answer. So I think that's what leads me to want to help other people in this regard.
Yeah.
So I might not have all the answers, but I love researching and finding them in the
You were
speaking
that girl in
community.
class that would always raise her hand and
Ugh, yes, that was
weren't
me.
you?
I'm embarrassed. Yes, that yeah.
No, don't, because that's awesome. That's an incredible quality to be able to research something, to find out the answer and to share it because that's what people need.
Well, thanks.
So so that's a good strength that you have.
Sometimes, yes, I will agree. Sometimes it's just obnoxious. We all have to admit that.
How would you encourage other creatives in their own journey, those, whether maybe they're writers or artists or even something else? Do you have a piece of advice or something that you would like to encourage them on their own creative journeys?
I would say, whatever creative journey that you're on, y a big part of you is doing that for yourself, and not everyone is going to understand it. Not everyone is going to, uh, be interested in it,
Hmm.
but that doesn't make it any less important, especially for
Hmm.
you as an individual and as a creative. So continue to follow your passion, chase it, um, and find other people to connect with who have similar passions and who are creative, because they're going to understand what it is that drives you and makes you excited about what you're doing. And don't discount the don't ignore the people who don't agree or don't find
Hmm.
interest in it, because they're valuable too, but maybe just not in this part of your life. So just
Hmm.
find that balance and don't stop chasing what you're excited about just because people close to you don't get it.
Yeah, awesome. How should people get a hold of you? What's the best way? Is it your website or are you on a particular social media that people could find you on and follow you
Oh
and check
yeah,
out your works?
I'm all over the place. uh, Probably the place where I like to be the most is Instagram.
Okay,
So that's just Rachel Ritchey, and it's RachaelRitchey,
okay, and what's your website?
and that's also RachelRitchey.com.
Perfect.
And then I'm on Twitter and Facebook and DeviantArt. I forgot I've put up some of my artwork on
Oh,
DeviantArt.
good.
So that's again Rachel Ritchie. I tried to make it as easy as possible to find me
That's good.
because I do. I love to connect with people, writers, non-writers.
That's awesome. Can they get to all of those places through your website?
Yes, they're all there. Some easy clickable buttons at the top.
And do you, on DeviantArt, do you sell your art?
Yeah, I've not gotten to that point yet. So now I just
Okay.
share it to see. It's all copyrighted, but you can go look at it and check it out if you want to. Eventually, if I get better and better at digital art, I probably will move that direction.
Well, I can't wait to get on there and check out some of your art as well, because I didn't know you were on there.
It's been fairly recent that I've gotten on there, and I'm on Wattpad too for writers, just because I thought that was a fun way to connect with people as well.
That is a fun way. Can you explain Wattpad? I'm not sure we've had anybody talk about that yet, just in case someone doesn't know what that is.
Sure. So Wattpad is like a conglomeration of writers and readers from around the world. Again, just huge. Uh, People will write stories and you can post them on there. You can uh, people can just come and read them. There's no cost to do that. People will read through your story. They'll like sections of it. You put it in chapters or a whole book all at once. It doesn't really matter. Um, People can comment on your stories. So, that's how what's her name? Who wrote the famous Shades of Grey? Is that what it's called? Now I'm blanking on it.
uh, E.L. James.
Yeah, that's how she became famous at first, was her stories were on Wattpad. And it was, at the time though, it was Twilight fan fiction that morphed into
Right.
something else later, of course, but it started out as Twilight fan fiction, which is something you'll find a lot of on Wattpad, is fan fiction.
Yeah.
So if you
A lot
really
of fan fiction.
like a certain kind of story, you'll see a whole bunch of people that write those. There's lots of good stuff on there, and there's lots of not so good stuff on there, just so you know.
Yeah.
It's not all the same quality, but it's really fun for people to get on there and to participate and write their own stories for people to read, about things that they have in common. So that fan base, and then also for people like me to post stories that I want to share with people before I publish them, just to get some feedback and stuff like that.
Yeah, so that's a great point. As a writer, that is a place where you can post different chapters or pieces or maybe even the whole book, but to be able to get feedback before you hit publish, especially if you've never had anybody else read your work and you don't know how it would be received.
Right.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea.
Exactly. Yeah, and it's not for everybody. Some people would probably be better off joining a writing group to get that feedback.
That's a good idea too.
And there's online writing groups and in-person writing groups. You just have to search for them.
Well, Rachel, thank you so much for spending time with us and sharing your creative story with us. And it's been really fun.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me on and letting me ramble and talk about pretty much anything.
That's what we're here for. We just want to chat and have fun.
It's great.
Well, I'll make sure and put all your links, like I said, in the show notes. So if anyone needs help finding them, that's where they will be.
Thank you. Thanks again.
Well, thank you. We'll talk to you later.